voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
How do you think the federal response is going right now to coronavirus?
Look, right now, if you go look through the litany of things that we have done in response, testing, what we've had, literally, we are testing more than the entire world combined. We've got PPE produced, masks produced. Go ahead.
And you've seen the results, but you've also seen the outcome. So you think everything's going, so you're touting accomplishments that they aren't meeting what
Brianna,
needs to be done for this. Do you think everything's fine?
Meeting what that needs to be done, right? I hear a lot of things that get thrown around about the allegations about what to do when we're talking about a virus. 2 years ago in Texas, we had about 11,000 people die of the flu. 2 years ago, 11,000 people died of the flu. We've had about 4,000 die from COVID.
Do you think this is just a flu?
I'm not saying this. See, this is what you guys love to do, right? Am I saying
no,
it's
I'm
the
just
flu?
saying,
No,
you brought up the flu. I didn't bring up the flu. You brought up the flu.
Go look at the report by Ioannidis at Stanford, where he walks through the differences. Flu is terrible for children. We had 150 people die of the flu, children, 2 years ago. The COVID virus is obviously worse for some of our more vulnerable. Nursing homes, 45% of the deaths nationwide are in nursing homes. We need to do a better job continuing to protect nursing homes in Texas and throughout the country.
What do you want? What do you want to see? What do you want to see from the federal government then? Is there any improvement that you want to see with how things are being done when it comes to coronavirus? I'm not hearing you say that you do. It sounds like you think the federal response is going well.
I think the federal government has done extraordinarily well in producing masks and producing testing and getting things out to the American people. But here's what's important. I don't think they've done a good enough job driving the message for the American people not to be afraid. I've seen polling that suggests that people think that of the people who get the virus, 5% of them die. It's just not true. It's like 0.0003%. And what we need to do is focus on where the vulnerable are and not scare our kids. There was a report today that 68% of kids are going around and having mental health issues and depression because we don't have them in our schools. We're scaring the bejesus out of our children for no reason.
Look, just south of you, it's 40 out of 100,000 people with COVID are dying, right?
Look, I understand
that rate that you're touting isn't true for the very place near where you represent.
The South Valley, the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, what you're trying to talk about, you're actually taking the very fact that we have an unsecure border and a wide open border and dealing with Mexico, who's got serious issues with their virus, and we've got the significant problem in South Texas, and all of that is then circulating around because people are going to crack back and forth across the border, and you're trying to turn that on the point that of 330 million Americans, the fatality rate in America is vastly less than in not a lot of places around the world, by the way, including Japan, places in Europe, a lot of the places that people are touting as great, our fatality rate is far less. We're dealing with the crisis. Governor Abbott is dealing with it in Texas. There are a lot of things that we'll continue to work through, but the bottom line is the American people need to be able to go back to work, go back to school, and protect our seniors and our most vulnerable and get our hand on the virus. If we need to set up field tents and field operations in the valley, great, let's do that. We can do those sorts of things.
So the messaging right now, I just want to be clear because as Texas currently is the fourth hardest hit state in the country when it comes to number of cases, right?
Number of cases, yes.
That's not. Well, please let me finish my question.
Yeah.
What you want is you want to be telling Texans and Americans, don't be afraid. You should reopen. That's what it sounds like you're saying. And I wonder, when you have, for instance, a lot of people who are afraid, and you're aware of this. Do you really think that do you think that saying that to them and not leveling with them is actually something that gives them the pause that they need to actually feel like they're getting the information and an honest picture from the representatives that would make them feel more comfortable opening up.
You're making my point. Please call on Dr. Leonidas from Stanford. Please call on some of the researchers from Oxford. Please call on these are very smart people.
Hey, we have experts. We have a number of epidemiologists on CNN every day. You're aware of that.
Call the epidemiologists on who are raising real legitimate questions about whether or not we should have locked down.
Look, we're talking about the White House task force. It's not like we're not deviating from any sort of accepted science here. This is what the White House task force is saying.
To your point, right? But go talk to the doctors who are out there saying, and who are very smart doctors. This is Stanford, right? I'm not talking about.
So you want a second opinion on the White House coronavirus task force? You want a second opinion on the CDC?
I want second and third and fourth opinions.
Sounds like you just want to confuse people.
Because no, I want to know the truth, Brianna. I want to look. When my doctor diagnosed me and he said I had stage 3 cancer 9 years ago, I asked him what my odds of survival were. And you know what he told me? He didn't give me the number. He said, your odds are 0% or 100%. You choose. And I think we need to be talking to the American people straight up and give them the information and not scaring them. We should tell them that only 2 children have died in Texas because of the COVID virus that we're aware of so far, and 150 died of the flu 2 years ago. We have to be able to work through viruses in a way that we don't cripple people's lives, cripple the economy, shut down jobs, and by the way, cost lives. How many people are dying from depression, opioid abuse, lack of cancer screenings? One of my best friends just went in and got a stage 3 breast cancer diagnosis. She hasn't been getting her screenings. Why? Because we've been shutting down elective procedures, shutting down people's access to health care, all because this government has not done, I think, to answer your question, a good enough job to answer it, explaining to the American people the realities of what we're facing. This is what we need to do. Explain the truth and not scare them. Not do what Governor Cuomo did, by the way, and making everybody feel good and shoving a whole bunch of sick people back into nursing homes, causing lots of people to die. That happened.
I do want to make a note that you mentioned the border. It is so bad in the U.S. that Mexico wants tighter border controls to keep Americans from bringing in the virus to Mexico. We just need to be very clear about that.
I would love to work with Mexico to tighten our border security, Brianna. Let's do it right now. Delighted to do that.
They're saying the issue is Americans, not Mexicans.
If we can work together to secure our border, I'd be delighted to do that. But let me just tell you that we are working and getting on top of this in Texas. We've got the numbers are going in the right direction. We've been working to keep the curve flat, which is the exact thing everybody said we should do in March.
Yeah,
and yet you guys love to tout
have you seen your curve? Have you seen your curve? That is not a flat curve.
Yeah, we've been holding those numbers down, and go look at what you guys tout the Cuomo curve, and it's literally the exact opposite. The exact opposite of what the experts said. It's the exact opposite. Put the curve up on the screen for listeners. Show the curve. It's literally the curve that they said to avoid.
I so wish that when it came to Texas, I could just put the curve up right now, but I do not actually have that. At my fingertips, that's how it works.
And understand where it's happening to the border.
I do not think that you are accurately representing what is happening across Texas, but Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Brianna. Happy to come on anytime.
So just a short time ago, I was interviewing Texas Congressman Chip Roy, and through a storm of unrelated talking points about the border and Antifa, he falsely claimed that the coronavirus curve in his state was flat. He said, we're getting on top of this in Texas. We've been working to keep the curve flat. Well, it is not flat, not by a Lone Star mile. Check this out here. He said, show the curve. Here's the curve as you can see it. It's a disaster. It's a grim chart. It shows the past 4 months of the pandemic outbreak. And those right there, them's the facts.
It is Thursday, the 23rd of July of 2020. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. And indeed, it's quite spicy. Things are getting hot out there. I thought the virus was supposed to just magically disappear when the heat came, and we've had heat for quite a while. Ron DeSantis is on the talk shows pretty much saying the heat's going to make it magically disappear without actually saying it. And they're going to open up the schools and, see what happens. And I know what's going to happen. We all do. Rick Scott does, because his grandkids will not be going. They're going to be socially distancing at home. Because, they're not going to endanger their kids in this. Are you kidding me? Whenever there's a war, or, I got to tell you, Democrats, by and large, their kids go off to these wars. And Republican leaders? Yeah, rarely. So, put your kids in the line of fire. I don't know, my kid's got a bone spur. All right. So, speaking of which, General Bone Spurs and his Torquemando or whatever bar are putting Operation Legend into effect. It's already been in effect for a bit here, but Operation Legend, I have to tell you, and I have a little bit of expertise in some of the more guttural languages, shall I say. Operation Legend sounds a lot like Reichstagführer in the original German. I wonder where they got it. I think they're trying to get some fires started and blame it on Antifa. And I guess Walls of Moms are part of Antifa now. Walls of Moms, they're springing up in every single Democratic stronghold. Yeah, these outposts of Democratic strongholds that Trump and Barr are trying to eradicate. Yeah, if you're going to vote for anybody other than Trump, well, obviously you're a violent terrorist and you must be eradicated with extreme prejudice. Wow. Barr said that the response to George Floyd's murder, or I think death, Barr said death, was very extreme. Well, yeah, when you start sending out paramilitary troops and tanks and all that, tear gassing moms, that's pretty extreme. But what he means is that by dint of the fact that we went out in millions and protested police brutality, that's a questioning of authority, and you cannot question authority. What do you think this is, America? No, this is some Opus Dei wet dream that this guy's had ever since he first, I don't know, I'm sorry to bring this up here so early in the morning, the first time he ever had kind of like a little nocturnal emission in the confessional. Bill Barr is one sick puppy. And I got to tell you, these sick puppies always want to take it out on somebody else, and Bill Barr's doing that. All right. Well, if you forget history, it's going to resonate again, and that tone is not going to change. It'll be the same tone of authoritarian fascism that it's always had. And I know fascism didn't exist way back in classical times. But it did. Just wasn't named as such. Had a different kind of name, sort of like the Royals. Okay. Well, maybe the accumulation of money is the root of all evil. Maybe that is correct. Very few are untainted by, evil when they've accumulated a bunch of money. And evil is banal. You might just be in the back sunning yourself by the pool while the world is on fire. But the banality of that is evil in and of itself now, isn't it? Tear gassing pregnant moms. Hitting them with rubber bullets. Department heads, 52-year-old women department heads of history at Lewis and Clark College, University, I might add, in Portland. Shot in the face. Concussion. Just as at Taserface, that's Christopher David's handle on Twitter, just as he said, if they're gonna gas moms, of course they're gonna gas vets. They don't care. They're a bunch of little brown shirts. They have no sense of anything, It's they have a sense of authority, and I don't know, kicking ass. Sounds a lot like brown shirts in the original German, the SA Gestapo. These are the shock troops, the stormtroopers, the unbadged militias with the 3-foot-long sticks beating the crap out of people. Pretty soon we're all going to be wearing a Star of David. And one other thing. Antifa is something that Trump made up. Antifa doesn't exist. Antifa, he means anti-fascist. All right, let's get this clear. I have this argument with these Proud Boy fascists and 3%ers out here. Oh, yeah, we got Antifa. Look, Antifa is in Germany and Europe. It's not in America. And if you're not anti-fascist, what the hell is wrong with you? There was a question asked, how is it possible? And they were showing these pictures of, these paramilitary troops, part of the Justice Department and DHS. How is it that these Americans can perpetuate this kind of violence on other Americans under the color of authority? Well, I blame it on the school-to-prison guard pipeline, okay? That's what I blame it on. I think maybe we ought to educate these kids a little bit more instead of just sending them to the for-profit prison system so they can get, the equivalent of a Walmart greeter job, but with violence. We used to make a joke about Home Depot, how incompetent it was. It was hard for contractors to go into Home Depot and try to get some sort of, advice. So our joke was that the only test that, the people at Home Depot had to pass was a drug test. Now I'm not so sure about this school-to-prison guard pipeline. Because if they gave them drug tests, how much steroids would be circulating within their bloodstream, among other aggressive inducing compounds? I wonder. Well, if I was to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, part of what I would be doing was making every single law enforcement officer from all levels, even the unbadged paramilitaries, piss in a jar. And if there's steroids there, I don't know. Do we re-educate them? Because if we fire their asses, what are they going to do? They're going to go and join the militias. The actual militias. So we got that. I think re-educating in some way, but certainly not being law enforcement. Maybe they should cut trails in the Sierras. Maybe they should volunteer in convalescent hospitals and attend to old people. Maybe tutor math, if they're capable of that, for grade school kids. How about delivering meals to shut-ins because of the pandemic? We could put these people to work doing actual, protect and serve functions, just not as cops with 3-foot-long sticks beating the crap out of American citizens exercising their Fourth Amendment rights and their First Amendment rights. How is it that armed militias can take over actual state houses like in Michigan and get in law enforcement space and spit in their face and they're holding guns? Nothing. That is their right. But holding a Black Lives Matter sign gets you shot between the eyes with a less than lethal round that's only less than lethal when it bounces off the pavement first. If they're going to sniper you and blast you between the eyes, that is not less than lethal. That is a potentially lethal round. I am going to insist, and I hope that I'm not alone here, and I don't think I am. I'm going to insist that when Biden takes office, that we avoid this trap of we can't look back, we can only look forward. We're not going to do that again. There needs to be an accounting. And we need to do it in a systemic way. We need to address the systemic nature of this. We need to have every single, and I'm not kidding, we need to have every single one of law enforcement pee in a jar. And if they're on steroids, well, let's, at the very least, we got to get them off it. I know police chiefs across America want their forces to be intimidating. Well, we don't need intimidating forces anymore. You can fight crime without a tank. And 3-foot clubs beating the crap out of pregnant moms. Please. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, I'm kind of liking a few of those people at CNN, like Brianna Keeler, because she doesn't. She's so impassive. I like, I would be like I am now, yammering. I'd be so upset. How dare you say these lies? And she just sits there and just lets the, subject walk in it some more, spread it around. Okay. And then hits him with the zinger. I like it. Because it seems, by and large, the GOP is just going to gaslight America and say everything is fine with COVID-19. Everything's fine. We got to teach our people not to fear. Oh, Jesus. The GOP has been nothing but fear. Trump is showing pictures of his own riots and saying this is what's going to happen with Biden. And I'm thinking, wait a second. It's happening now. When Biden takes over, I think that's going to stop. Yeah. Well, they truck in fear. They project also. Well, we are aware of their game, and they have awakened the sleeping giant, and they will regret it. On the rest of the menu, 113 House Republicans voted to keep Confederate statues in display in the Capitol, and they're going to live to regret it. Learn, too. An attorney arrested by Trump's SA Gestapo among Portland's Wall of Moms protesters says she was not read her rights, among other constitutional infractions. And ethnic and social justice studies will join English and science courses as graduation requirements at the nation's largest public university system. Wow, that's cancel culture, isn't it? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a Canadian court ruled the bilateral safe third country pact with the U.S. is invalid because U.S. immigration detention violates human rights. And Greek firefighters brought in reinforcements from across the country to help control a large forest fire fanned by strong winds near the seaside village of Kechries in the eastern Peloponnese. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of our homepage at the bottom, right there by the social media scroll and the chat room link, if you go right there to the leftish of the page, you'll find our link to our Patreon page. And if you are able to, in these perilous times, to send us, how about the equivalent of an espresso-type coffee drink? If you could send those funds our way, we are quantum mechanics in our abilities to stretch these dollars really beyond compare. And you know what? Even though we might not be able to measure something, it still exists. It's unbelievable. But anyway, we are able to, I don't know, Harness the power of all those strange quarks out there and stretch these dollars, pay our bills, fly under the radar, resist as the founders originally intended. And your generosity, and those of you now who might be able to be generous enough to send us an espresso-type coffee drink fund, are helping us fulfill our civic duty, and we thank you for that generosity. Really, thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that and so much more. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and you could go ahead and follow me there. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media. And I'll be able to do that myself instead of having Kelly intercede in my stead, because my suspension from Facebook ostensibly is supposed to be up sometime on Friday, but I suspect they're going to do what's happened before, and I'll be serially suspended for another 30 days because these QAnon right-wing brown shirt idiots out here have been able to game the Facebook algorithm, and they get to continue perpetuating their lies about COVID and elections. And the liberals seem to be suspended on a regular basis, me included. Darn. But anyway, that should be showing up in my from my hand, hopefully someday on Friday. So, yeah, check us out there. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc. etc., etc., etc. Hey, our snoozing sous chef is really snoozing today. He had some bad dreams last night. He woke up in a start and barked a few times. And he doesn't really do that often. But, bark generally. And he went on patrol around the house like he was looking for something. And I went to, what's up, buddy? And he was walking in his sleep. He was having some sort of bad dream. But we got him back to bed. But I think he woke up enough that it's, he's snoring pretty loud now. But that's okay. He's a snoozing sous chef. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, by the way, is by Josh Israel out of the American Independent. 113 House Republicans voted yesterday, Wednesday, to keep Confederate statues on display in the U.S. Capitol building. But the House did vote 305 to that 113 to stop displaying the statues in public view because they're going to put them in some sort of museum-type area where they can have the reverential treatment they deserve. What the heck? I don't know. I'd be repurposing them somehow. You can pulverize them down to, some dust maybe. Pack it together with some kind of adhesive and make something. I don't know. Fill in the cracks in the ship of state. We could do that. The bill, let's see. The House voted by a margin that I just stated, 305 to 113, to remove statues of persons, quote, who served as an officer or voluntarily with the Confederate States of America or of the military forces or government of a state while the state was in rebellion against the United States. I think that's a fair type of thing to do, but not here in America. We have to take a knee and bow our heads and kiss the rings of those who declared war against us. What? No. The bill would also remove statues of other racist officials, namely white supremacist Charles Brantley Adcock, slavery enthusiast John Caldwell Calhoun, and white standards of civilization defender James Paul Clark. It instructs that a bust of the Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney, author of the infamous Dred Scott decision, be replaced with one of Justice Thurgood Marshall in the old Supreme Court chamber. And that sounds fair to me as well. Each state is allowed to donate 2 statues of persons notable in their history for display in the Capitol's National Statuary Hall collection. This bill would allow states who have selected Confederates to transport them home and replace them with others. Well, that's rather generous, I would say. As the Hill reported in June, current statues on display include former Confederates Joseph Wheeler of Alabama, Uriah Milton Ross of Arkansas, Edmund Kirby Smith of Florida, Alexander Hamilton Stevens of Georgia, Edward Douglas White of Louisiana, Jefferson Davis and James Zachariah George of Mississippi, Zebulon Baird Vance of North Carolina, Wade Hampton of South Carolina, Robert E. Lee of Virginia, and John Kenna of West Virginia. The legislation comes as communities across the world have begun removing monuments to racist figures, often in response to pressure from anti-racism protesters, or as Bill Barr and Donald Trump refer to them as, violent anarchists. Alex Hardgrave of the Oregonian brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Beaverton lawyer arrested early Tuesday by federal officers at Portland protests said officers never informed her of her rights or identified where they worked. Jennifer Christensen, age 37, said she was standing arm in arm with other women as part of the wall of moms near the front line of protesters converged outside the federal courthouse. She now faces criminal charges and is not allowed to go back on federal property to protest. Wow, now that's cancel culture. The Mothers Group has drawn hundreds of people downtown to join nightly protests against systemic racism. Federal officers released tear gas on the crowd outside the courthouse just before 12:30 a.m. As the moms backed away with the rest of the crowd, Christensen said she found herself near the edge of the group. She heard a woman nearby say she had been hit by an officer's baton. Christensen said she put her arm in between the officer and people retreating. Another officer, wearing a black uniform, arrived and pointed at Christensen. He said to the Billy Club guy, "That's the one who hit me." Yeah, moms hitting these paramilitary mutant ninjas. Well, so they arrested her. Now, neither the Department of Homeland Security nor the Department of Justice immediately responded to requests for comments about Christensen's arrests. The officers separated her from the line in a series of actions she describes as a blur. She said she had seen a video clip of her arrest that showed an officer restraining her with an arm across her chest. "That must be why my sternum hurts today," she said. One of the arresting officers turned her around and pushed her against the wall of the federal courthouse, she said, then touched her breast and butt. But it's unclear if it was intentional or not. She was terrified for a moment. Officers handcuffed her and took her to the federal courthouse. One handcuff was so loose it slipped off, allowing her to quickly send a text from her Apple Watch to her husband. Well, that's good that she was able to do that. She said she was put in an elevator in the building with 4 officers. They took her to a holding cell on the 4th floor where she stayed by herself. No one ever read her rights, and she said. She tried to sleep, but barely, since the only place in the cell to sleep was a small metal bench. When officers tried to ask her questions about what happened, she said she chose not to speak, citing her Fifth Amendment rights. A few times people came in and checked on her. She asked for a blanket or if the officer could bring her flannel from her bag, and they did not. The person said he was sorry he couldn't bring it to her, Christensen said. "Don't tell me you're sorry when you're not," she said. She thought to herself. People who are sorry do not do what they did. Well, I keep telling you this school-to-prison guard pipeline, it really harms people, not just the prisoners. She said she is not dangerous, but was being treated like she was dangerous. Around 7:15 in the morning, she was driven to the Multnomah County Detention Center, where she waited in a cell until 1:30 p.m. County jail records confirm she was booked into jail at 7:20 a.m. at the request of U.S. Marshals. She said she didn't know what agency arrested her until she asked how she could get her phone and other personal items back. Sheriff's deputies said they did not have it, but that Federal Protective Service did. No officers identified themselves to her throughout the night. She also didn't know until later what she had been arrested for, and only found out from a member of the Sheriff's Department, not a federal officer. She is charged with misdemeanor assault of a federal officer and for refusing to leave federal property. She said she was trying to leave federal property when she was detained and arrested, and she said she would never hit an officer because she is a lawyer and an officer of the court and would not jeopardize her career. At 1:25 p.m., Christensen had her arraignment. When she was preparing to go, she was asked if she had her charging documents, and she said she was never given any. She also never got to call an attorney. She was released a little after 4 p.m. along with 4 other protesters arrested on Monday. She didn't get her phone, identification, or shoelaces back. She did leave with sore muscles from sitting in a cell and bruises from her arrest. She will not be going back to protest soon, she said, because part of the terms of her release are a curfew and staying away from that area downtown. Now remember, she's an officer of the court. See, she said she felt an obligation to share her story following the controversy surrounding federal officers in Portland. She said her experience being arrested by federal officers was bad, but said immigrants and black people have faced the same abuses for much longer. Not enough people paid attention, she said, about the DHS's treatment of immigrants. If it takes a tiny little rainbow-wearing white lady to bring attention to this problem that has been a problem for the immigrant community for so long, then so be it. You know, I might also add that Mayor Ted Wheeler, who's no fan of the many of the protesters in Portland, came down to the protesters to have pretty much of a listening session with them. And you know what happened? The federal officers tear gassed the mayor of Portland, Oregon. Dill of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Ethnic and social justice studies will join English and science courses as graduation requirements at the California State University system after the Board of Trustees at the nation's largest four-year public university system approved the idea yesterday, Wednesday. The change, made amid the national reckoning over racism and police brutality, will take effect in 3 years and represent the first change to the school's general education curriculum in over 40 years. Meanwhile, the state legislature is considering a bill to require ethnic studies, a more narrowly focused proposal that wouldn't count social justice classes. If passed and signed by the governor, the measure would overrule the action by California State University, a possible scenario denounced by school leaders as an intrusion into academia. Indeed. we'll report on that as it progresses. We better get to our break, and when we get back from that break, you do know we will go through weather from around the world, and we're going to have to finish up with the stories that we curated for you today, because that's what we do. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that a mob began an attack on Chinese workers in San Francisco that killed 4 people. During the mid-1870s, a depression swept across the nation. White workers from the East Coast headed west, many to San Francisco, hoping to find a job. Skilled Chinese workers who had completed their labor on the Transcontinental Railroad also came to the city. There, the Chinese laborers found work in trades like cigar making and also open laundries. Resentment against the Chinese workers grew in the city's white working class. In the summer of 1877, workers on the East Coast railroads walked off their jobs after their wages were cut repeatedly. A wave of labor militancy washed over the nation. Historians often refer to that summer as the Great Upheaval, a time where capital and labor literally battled in the streets. In San Francisco, the Workingmen's Association, a socialist workers' organization, called for a rally in front of City Hall. The meeting began with speeches against the titans of capital. But soon, a group of angry workers began to demand speakers, quote, talk about the Chinese. A mob stormed off to terrorize Chinese residents. They burned 20 Chinese laundries. After the violence ended the next day, the anti-Chinese rhetoric continued. An Irish-born freight handler by the name of Dennis Kearney became the vocal leader of the call that the Chinese must go. Adherence to the anti-Chinese cause came to be known as Kearneyism. The backlash against Chinese workers spread beyond California. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. Solidarity of workers had fallen to racism. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
With Attorney General Barr by his side, Trump announced Wednesday that his administration is expanding a crackdown on violent crime by sending hundreds of federal agents to the Democratic-run cities of Chicago and Albuquerque. Barr said the Operation Legend program, which launched in Kansas City, Missouri, was different from the use of federal agents, quote, against riots and mob violence, and that these agents would help local police solve murders and take down violent gangs. Ted Wheeler, the mayor of Portland, Oregon, showed up on the 56th night of protests in his city Wednesday night. He was immediately jeered and taunted by the protesters. The heckling briefly stopped when he shouted, "Black Lives Matter," and pumped his fist in the air. Wheeler, who vehemently opposes the presence of federal agents in his city, has faced criticism from both sides of the protests after failing to rein in city police, who have also attacked the demonstrators. Later in the night, Wheeler was among the protesters standing at a fence guarding a federal courthouse who were tear-gassed by these federal thugs sent by Trump. Wheeler said it was the first time he'd ever been tear-gassed. Quote, "I'm not going to lie. It stings. It's hard to breathe. And I can tell you with 100% honesty, I saw nothing that provoked this response. I'm not afraid, but I am pissed off. This is an egregious overreaction on the part of the federal officers. This is flat-out urban warfare, and it's being brought on the people of this country by the President of the United States." Moving on, California reported Wednesday that its tally of confirmed coronavirus cases reached 409,000, surpassing New York as the state with the most total infections. This as outbreaks continue to spike, mostly in the West and South. The United States reported more than 1,100 new coronavirus deaths on Wednesday, the first time since May 29th that the nationwide total reached that high. Texas reported the most new deaths, with 197 people dying from the disease. Fatalities have been rising since June, which public health officials had warned would happen within weeks of a spike in new cases. Governors in Ohio, Indiana, and Minnesota on Wednesday joined a growing number of states requiring face coverings to reduce the infection risk. More than 30 states now have mask mandates. Dr. Deborah Birx, in a private phone call on Wednesday with some state and local leaders, said that 11 major cities are seeing increases in the percentage of positive tests and should take aggressive steps to mitigate their outbreaks. The cities? Baltimore, Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Miami, Minneapolis, Nashville, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, and St. Louis. This call was another private warning about the seriousness of the outbreaks given to local officials, but not released publicly. This coming less than a week after the Center for Public Integrity revealed that the White House had compiled a detailed report showing 18 states were in the red zone for coronavirus cases, again, never publicly released. In Congress, Senate Republicans continued Wednesday to work on their proposal for the next COVID-19 relief bill, with some pushing an unemployment benefits extension. Of course, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the bill would not extend the bonus. And then there are those Republican senators who are pushing to reduce it from $600 to $100 a week. Democrats want to extend the $600 a week benefit through the end of the year and included it in their $3.5 trillion HEROES Act that the House passed back in May and the Senate has not addressed. Well, a bipartisan effort to make Juneteenth a federal holiday failed in the Senate on Wednesday after Ron Johnson of Wisconsin blocked it from advancing. Johnson said that while he supported honoring the day that has come to mark slavery's end in the U.S., doing so with a new holiday would, quote, give federal workers a paid day off that the rest of America has to pay for. And to Wisconsinites, I say, you replaced Russ Feingold with that? For shame. But in a bipartisan 305 to 113 vote, with 72 Republicans joining all the Democrats on Wednesday, the House voted to remove Confederate statues from the Capitol. The bill would remove the bust of Supreme Court Justice Roger B. Taney, who authored the Dred Scott decision, and would require states to reclaim and replace their Confederate statues in the Capitol. Currently, each state is allowed to send 2 statues to the National Statuary Hall. Of course, Mitch McConnell is unlikely to bring the bill up for the vote, saying that he favors leaving the selection of which statues to display to the states. And for the second day in a row, Donald Trump delivered a campaign speech disguised as a coronavirus task force update from the White House briefing room, though he again appeared without a single task force member, medical expert, or anyone with half a brain. Among other lies, Trump claimed that kids aren't really carriers of the coronavirus.
They don't transmit very easily, and a lot of people are saying they don't transmit, and we're looking at that. We're studying John very hard, that particular subject, that they don't bring it home with them. Now, they don't catch it easily, they don't bring it home easily, and if they do catch it, they get better fast. We're looking at that fact. That is a factor, and we're looking at that very strongly. We'll be reporting about that over the next week.
Yeah? Tell that to the parent of the 9-year-old Florida girl who the Miami Herald reports is the youngest coronavirus victim yet. She's the 5th minor killed by Florida's COVID-19 surge that Governor Ron DeSantis has called a, quote, blip. The others were 2 11-year-olds, a 16 and a 17-year-old. And finally, in an interview that aired on Fox So-Called News Wednesday night, Trump once again bragged about passing a cognitive test, then went into detail about how he amazed his doctors by remembering 5 words in order.
I said to the doctor, it was Dr. Ronnie Jackson, I said, is there some kind of a test, an acuity test? And he said there actually is, and he named it, whatever it might be. And it was 30 or 35 questions. The first questions are very easy. The last questions are much more difficult, like a memory question. It's like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman, man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good. If you get it in order, you get extra points. Okay, now he's asking you other questions, and then 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes later, they say, remember the first question? Not the first, but the 10th question? Give us that again. Can you do that again? And you go person, woman, man, camera, TV. If you get it in order, you get extra points.
Experts say the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test is supposed to be easy, is not a measure of intelligence, but rather a way to look for signs of cognitive impairment.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
I couldn't make this up if I tried. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting cooler temperatures today, only between the mid to upper 80s. We might need a sweater now. Yes, indeed. Sunny mostly throughout the day. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Overnight lows in the upper 50s, low 60s. Generally clear with the winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. And some clouds in the morning will give way to mainly sunny skies in the afternoon tomorrow with highs around 88. And winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County of Southern Oregon have now increased to 257. We keep going up, and they want to recall the governor because she wants to keep us safe. Grass pollen right outside the window of the mothership here in Rogue River proper is moderate. The air quality index for the region is good at 24 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at 8. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.96 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 58%. So we're drying out. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 78 and fair. Paris is 85 and sunny. Rome is 93 and sunny. Kyiv is 76 degrees and fair. Kabul is 85 and fair. Hong Kong is 81 degrees and clear. Tokyo is 73 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 53 and fair. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy with a fog advisory. And New York is 81 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy. And there's an advisory, but I don't know what it is because they won't let me open up New York. I apologize. But that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. And Moira Warburton of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Canadian court ruled invalid a bilateral pact that compels asylum seekers trying to enter Canada via the American border to first seek sanctuary in the U.S., saying U.S. immigration detention violates their human rights. Under the Safe Third Country Agreement, asylum seekers who arrive at a formal Canada-U.S. border crossing going in either direction are turned back and told to apply for asylum in the first country they arrived in. Lawyers for refugees who had been turned away at the Canadian border challenged the pact, saying the United States does not qualify as a safe country under Donald Trump. Federal Court Judge Anne Marie McDonald ruled that the agreement was in violation of a section of Canada's Charter of Rights that says laws or state actions that interfere with life, liberty, and security must conform to the principles of fundamental justice, which apparently the United States does not follow.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Greek firefighters brought in reinforcements from across the country to help control a large forest fire, fanned by strong winds near the seaside village of Kechries in the eastern Peloponnese. Authorities said they had been forced to evacuate a residential settlement as the blaze, burning through pine trees, came close to a military camp where explosives were stored. Thick, Dark smoke clouded the area, with the front of the blaze moving south in very windy conditions. The blaze is fanned by strong winds. We have recommended the evacuation of 3 settlements. So far, there are no injuries or damage to homes, a fire brigade official said. Authorities had preventively evacuated the summer fun camp, taking children to a safer area near the village's beach. More than 70 firefighters were battling the blaze, assisted by 5 helicopters and 2 planes, with volunteers also helping. Late in the evening, reinforcements arrived from northern Greece. Winds had dropped, but the fire was still active on several fronts, witnesses said. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, and you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Don't we deserve it? Yes, we do. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.